Welcome to the Mike Litton Experience Podcast. Mike has over 31 years experience in real estate, finance, and investing. He's passionate about being a father, a teacher, a realtor, an investor, and a leader. Everyone has a story, and our passion is to help them tell it. And now, introducing the host of the Mike Litton Experience, Mike Litton.
So what can you expect from the Mike Litton Experience? You can expect stories that will inspire, motivate, advice that will sharpen your focus, and expert information on real estate, finance, and market conditions. Because of all the pain I was in, I went into a good feet store and they said, look, we don't know if we can cure this. We don't know, we're pretty sure we can improve it, but we don't know how much, okay? So they fit me. There's a custom fitting that takes place. They fit me. They bring out my inserts. They bring out my, pads, all that. And I put them in my shoes. And they told me, they said, listen, wear them an hour the first day, a couple hours the second day. Don't go, don't go full.
Don't go crazy. No.
Well, I'm nuts, right? And I'm that guy that will wear them 12 hours the first day if you don't tell me to do otherwise, right? So I probably wore them a couple hours the first day, probably 4 hours the second day. And yeah, my feet were a little sore because they were getting used to that. I had basically gotten to a place to where my feet were completely misaligned, both of them. And so it was scary. And so within just about a week, I had no foot pain and haven't had any for decades. So it's a real honest to goodness, effective therapy that I've sent you guys more customers than you can possibly imagine.
Thank you. It works.
I tell them about Good Feet.
It certainly works.
It
It's
really
a personalized system. It's sort of like braces for your feet. It's not an over the counter, go pick it up at CVS. We measure your foot, we analyze, we measure your foot, we look at your footprint versus the ideal footprint.
Yep.
We do a balance test. We have over 400 different types of arch supports. We find the system that works best for you, and you walk out of it with the same day, and it transforms people's lives. It really does.
It's amazing, and it also helps with back pain too, by the way.
Well, the entire body is linked through the kinetic chain, which if you think about when you build a house, if you don't have a solid foundation, everything else is going to wiggle. It's the same thing with the kinetic chain. So, no, I appreciate it. I'll share it with my colleagues. It's great.
Yeah, it's cool, man. So I'm a legitimate success story with Good Feet. So,
Awesome.
So you decide to write the book. Now,
Yeah.
I want to talk about the book, but I want to talk about what compelled you to write it. So what was it? Was it something where you've wanted to write a book for 20 years? Was it some event in your life that triggered you to do it? What brought you there?
I had been approached a couple times during the course of my career. We've heard you speak publicly. You got a lot of nice things to say. You're kind of funny, maybe even charming. Would you ever think about putting a book together? And I never really had the state of mind to think, because I am the world's worst speller, and I'm a multiple assault victim of autocorrect. So I don't consider myself an amazing writer.
Multiple assault victim. I love that.
But one of the things that I do in my spare time is I do a lot of mentoring and teaching.
Yeah.
Whether it's at universities and high schools or just through some of the formalized mentoring programs. And it seemed like I was making a difference in people's lives.
Yeah.
And so I wanted to figure out how I could do that on a broader scale.
Yeah.
And the book for me was really an opportunity to help people on their journey. It's not a manual.
Yeah.
I think any of these marketing manuals are worth the paper they're printed on, because there is no right way or wrong way. There's just a way.
Right.
But it's a guide.
Yeah.
It's meant to help people young in their career, old in their career, changing careers, entrepreneurs, learn from some of my failures, perhaps some of my successes. And if I can get you to take a bigger step forward and avoid some of the challenges that I faced, then I make a difference.
Yeah. And it's, the thing I love the most about the book, and by the way, you're charming and funny, just so we're clear.
Thank you.
Right?
Thank you.
So the thing I love the most about the book is when I first when it first arrived and I looked at the cover, I misunderstood it. And I misunderstood it because I'm massive ADHD, right? And so I look at the book and I'm like, okay, move out of the friend zone. Okay, right. Then I read it and I completely got it. The thing about it is it made me reflect on times when I was loved by a brand. I felt loved by a brand,
Mhm.
right? And I loved your example of the Walmart greeter,
Yeah.
and people have always told me, they're like, listen, Litton, you can never be a Walmart greeter. And I'm like, why is that? And they go, it takes you half an hour to introduce yourself. There'd be a line out the door. But I love people, right? I get a big kick out of people. So I started thinking about my Nordstrom experiences. I started thinking about these different brands and times when they loved on me. And it's in your book. I mean, it's a big deal where people need to understand that the success with this is about, you're moving from friend to love. And it's a big deal. And I love how you talk about like your restoration hardware story, right? About the ceiling fan and how surprised you were
Yeah.
that after 2 years, you're sitting downstairs and you hear this crash after having this thing for 2 years, right? And you call Restoration Hardware and you're like, hey, and they immediately look up what you bought. They tell you exactly what it was that you bought, and then you're like, it's out of warranty, and they're like, no, we're giving you a new one. Now,
It was such an epic surprise.
yeah, it was a surprise for me. I've shopped at Restoration Hardware. I've never had anything like that happen. I never purchased a ceiling fan from them, but I've never had anything like that happen with anything from Restoration Hardware. But the thing about it is, it completely transformed the brand in my eyes, because in my eyes, Restoration Hardware is a little more expensive than most places, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
But
Yeah.
it completely transformed the brand to me reading that story.
It it was a moment of humanity. Um, fortunately, I financially was able to buy a new one if I needed one, but I didn't have to.
Right.
And it forever changed my perception of them.
Yeah.
I had a situation where I'm a longtime leaser of a particular car, and I just got my second car from them.
Mhm.
And when I turned in my first one and I got the lease turn-in report, they nickel and dimed me for every little nick and scratch. And I called them and I said, guys, I just leased a brand new car
Mhm.
from you. I just turned in my old one.
Mhm.
Some of these are ridiculous.
Yeah.
And they hemmed and hawed and hemmed and hawed. And I said, listen, I got to talk to the supervisor because I'm not paying this. Like, I'm just not.
Right.
Like, it's just ridiculous. And I got somebody on the phone, and reluctantly, they agreed to negotiate me the pricing down.
Mhm.
But I had to go to like 2 different people.
Yeah.
And like what I was looking for was essentially like a 20% reduction in their I wasn't debating like whether or not there were issues. That wasn't the challenge, because like there were some scratches and dings, whatever. But it was their pricing model. It's
Yeah.
like the repair was $68, but it was 250 for the labor. It's like,
Right.
come on, guys.
Yeah.
And especially on somebody who's staying with them.
Mhm.
So there was a moment there where they weren't human, and I
Mhm.
pushed, and I got somebody who was like, "You know what? All right, let me talk to somebody." And it worked itself out. Am I still a huge fan of the car company? Not as much as I was before.
Yeah. Because you left with an icky feeling,
Yep.
right?
Yep.
And you almost regret releasing with that brand. There was a brand that shall remain nameless. I had a client call me up, and she's young. She was one of the youngest millionaires with a big company that most people know the name of. I can't tell you the name of it. But
Right.
she started with that company as a receptionist, and she was in her early 20s. She was in her mid to late 20s, young, right? Female. She went to a car dealership and nobody acknowledged her. Nobody asked her if they could help her. So she called me up and she said, I had this experience at this dealership. And I said, I know the people that own the dealership. So why don't we do this? You come with me. I'll take you. I'll pick you up. I'll take you, and we'll go get your car." So we go out. We get out of the car, and they crowd me, and they completely ignore her. Exactly what she told me had happened. Okay. So I looked at him. I said, "I'm not the customer. She is. I'm just here. I'm just here as her coach, right?" So they go and we test drive the car. She picks the car. She's sitting down to write a check for the car, and the salesman stops, takes his hand, physically takes his hand, puts it on the check, and stops her from writing it. She's literally paying cash for this car. Okay.
Right.
She'd
Mhm,
already put the cash in the bank. It had been sitting there for a
mhm.
couple of months. She was ready to do this. He stops her and he says, "I can't let you do this. In good conscience, I can't let you do this. You have to lease this car." She
Wow.
looked at me like, "Get me out of here." And I said, "Well, we're out of here." And so we left. I didn't anymore get out the parking lot, and the owner called me. Okay. And the owner said, "What just happened?" And I explained to him what happened. And I said, "We're not coming back. You and I are friends, but we're not coming back.
Mhm.
And if need be, I'll come in and teach a class for you people for free on how to keep the lights on there, because right now you're going out of business." We went down the road to another dealership owned by a different company, same dealer, same car brand. Got out of the car, and there were 3 people that approached her before I got out of the car. Completely different.
Mhm.
She ends up buying that car that dealership had, because it was the only other one in California that was equipped like that, other than one in San Francisco,
Mhm.
and it didn't have one of the options that she wanted. Same color, all that, right? So, they end up buying it. I leave town because I have to go on a trip. I call in because I'm concerned. The salesman from that dealership spent 8 hours at this other dealership that I know the owners of, trying to get that car. They were trying to sell it before they did a dealer trade with him,
Mhm.
like out from under him kind of
Yeah,
thing.
yeah, got it, got it.
Okay. I'll never buy from them. Now, the brand I'm fine with, but the dealership I have a problem with.
Right, right.
So they have now had to sell their dealership to a larger company, and they're now out of the business.
Wow,
Well,
wow.
and it was only a few years. What you're talking about in your book is absolute business gospel. And that's what I want people to understand. Okay. They could have very well stayed in the love zone with that customer, and she would have bought that car. We'd have been done. We'd have moved on. But because they were spiffed on the lease, right? He had a
Mhm.
spiff coming on the lease. Because he was spiffed on the lease, he makes this grand gesture like I can't let you do this. Come on, give me a break.
Mhm.
Right. So, what you're saying is incredibly important in this book. Brands need to learn how to love on their clients in order to be effective. That absolutely has to happen. And I absolutely love what you put in your book.
Thank you.
What was your favorite thing about I know it was rough, but what was your favorite thing about how the book turned out?
You know, I think it comes across as a set of stories.
It is. Yeah.
I wanted to try to capture my spoken voice in writing.
Mhm.
I wanted it to have humility, humor, maybe a degree of arrogance or confidence. But most importantly, I wanted it to be pragmatic.
Yeah.
I have seen so many ethereal books on psychology and philosophy and this and that. I wanted it to be something where somebody could pick it up and actually feel smarter after reading it.
I do.
Um, and I appreciate that. And it may not be because of what I say, but maybe it's how you interpret a stimulus or a provocation that makes you go through your own mental process. That's kind of why I did it. I would say reading it, and I have not read the book cover to cover since I wrote it.
Okay.
I just won't. It's kind of like going and shooting a movie and somebody's saying, "Have you ever seen yourself in the movie?" Yeah, I've seen pieces, but I've read chapters
Mhm.
because there's something that sparked that I wanted to talk about. But I hope people feel coming out of it something. I hope they feel something. I
Yeah.
hope they gain something. And
I
I
certainly
think
do.
they do, and that's what I'm probably most proud of.
I believe they will. I really
Thank
do.
you.
And I
Thank you, Mike.
absolutely recommend it, both barrels. I could
Thank
not,
you.
I'm so unbelievably, I'm blessed that you sent it to me and I had an opportunity to read it. I'm so glad that we had an opportunity to meet. So I have a
Thank you.
question for you about
Yeah,
something that's in the book.
sure.
Red light, yellow light, green light. Talk about that for just a second. I've heard it before, but I never heard it explained the way you explained it. Just walk through it real quick.
You know, that actually emanated from an approach to building marketing plans that we started to create when we started GWiz. We actually used to call it the signal approach.
Yeah,
And the red light really is about purposeful decision making. You know, too much time is spent in looking at data, not enough time is spent in figuring out what questions you have to ask.
right.
And so the red light part of it is really about taking the time to pause and be reflective. Or am I asking for the right things?
Gather the
Okay.
data, right?
Yep. Gather the data, most importantly, gather the insight.
Mhm.
What do you really want to accomplish? The yellow light is really about, okay, you're moving, but you're moving ahead slowly. You're
Right.
not jumping to conclusions or decisions.
Yeah.
You're being methodical. You're being process oriented. You're looking at it not just for what it's saying, but what it potentially isn't.
Right.
And then the green light is, you know what, you're ready to go.
Mhm.
You're ready to go. You're ready to move forward. And that's where you've got to focus on executional excellence at its highest summary level. That's what really the traffic light represents.
So it's really the power of questions, right?
Power of questions, the power of also when you've debated and decided and it's time to commit, go for it.
Yeah. Pin your ears back and hit it.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely.
Okay. So if there was one most important lesson that people are going to learn from reading this book, what is it?
So I think it's maybe the only stroke of moderate genius in the entire book, which is my version of Einstein's theory, which is the brand value equation.
Yeah.
Brand value equals experience divided by price.
Yeah.
If you're looking at, well, is my product too expensive? You have to look at, if I'm delivering an amazing experience, I can charge a premium price and still have a positive brand value equation. And whether you're making 50, 500, 5 million or more, everybody wants value from the brands that they invest in.
Absolutely.
And so the greater the disparity between your numerator and denominator in a positive way, the easier it is to know that you're delivering value, and the faster you're going to get from friendship or fling to love.
Yeah.
If you have an upside down brand value equation, then you really have to ask yourself, what do I need to do to course correct it?
Right. Well, what I need to do to love on my clients,
Yeah. Yeah.
right? Because I
You
that
know,
got to get
that's
communicated.
well, that's I would say the second, if there's a a stroke of, let me take note of it, it's what I call the notion of thinking human.
Yeah.
And that's really the understanding that consumers make emotional decisions before they make rational choices. And if you treat every consumer as if they were your only consumer, you would jerry rig your customer experience very, very differently.
Correct. I totally agree. Okay. Who is the best person to read your book?
If you are a graduating senior or a graduating graduate school student, or you're in the first 3 to 5 years of your career in the marketing world, whether that's on the brand management side or the agency side, those are the audiences that I think would benefit, because I've been there. I've made so many of those learning experiences that I talk about in the book, and can provide a little bit of what does the future hold, that it could help you navigate the landscape, perhaps, and avoid some of the potholes that I fell in.
Yeah. So this is the book. It's over your
Thank you.
shoulder, I know,
Yeah.
but this is the book, and I highly, highly recommend it. I highly recommend it. I mean, I'm 57 years old. It's been a long time since I was in college. But here's the deal. I just got, because of this podcast, I was just invited to work with an entrepreneurship class with a local college. And so I'm going to be recommending this to them. It's
That's fabulous. I appreciate it. We'll talk afterwards. Maybe we can do a bulk deal. Happy
Well,
to
this
get
is
you some
incredibly
copies.
important. It's important that people understand that you can tell through every bit of this book how much you've been coaching and mentoring, because that's what this reads like. It reads like you have a coach in this book. It's awesome, man. You did a great
No,
job.
I appreciate it. And I hope if you take the journey and you buy it on Amazon, paperback or Kindle, no backsies. So you break it, you buy it.
Right.
But more importantly, in anything that you read that has an instructional nature to it, what I would say is find the things that resonate with you and build on them. I'm sure there's things in the book that you're going to disagree with philosophically. Everybody has an opinion. Just ask them; they'll tell you.
Sure.
I offer some opinions, and again, if they resonate with you, if they connect with your leadership values, if they are relevant to your situation, wonderful. If
Yeah.
they're not, then maybe you learn something about yourself from not taking the advice or the guidance that makes you a better person. Either way, I appreciate anybody taking the time to read it.
Yeah. And I think anybody should read it that really wants to know about marketing and certainly wants to understand how important it is that you love on your client. It's a big, big, big deal. Bigger now than it's ever been.
The consumer isn't always right, but they're always important.
Yeah. And remember, people make decisions based on emotion.
Yep.
They
Emotional decisions,
justify it
then
based,
rational choices.
yeah, they
Yep.
justify it based on logic.
Yep.
So you got to
Yep.
get them emotionally.
Gotta hook them emotionally. Gotta create that strong tension point.
Doug Zarkin, I cannot thank you enough for being our guest on the Mike Litton Experience. It was great to meet you. I cherish our time together. Thank you
Thanks,
again.
Mike. Thanks, Mike. It was great.
Thanks, buddy. We hope you enjoyed another episode of the Mike Litton Experience. If you did, do us a favor, smash that subscribe button, tell your friends, family, and coworkers about our program, and wherever you get your podcasts, please leave us a rating. It helps us to connect with quality people just like you.
And that's a wrap. Another episode of the Mike Litton Experience in the books. Reach out to Mike on Instagram at Litton Realty. Want to meet with Mike? Check out calendly.com/Rio760.